Hello, fourth graders. So today we are going to be continuing on in our story, The One and Only Bob, which is the second novel that goes along with The One and Only Ivan that we read together in class. We've made it through the first 6 parts of our book. So in the last part that we read how Ivan and Bob are kind of talking back and forth, and Bob is talking with some of the other animals at the zoo where they have gone to visit, where Bob and Julia have gone to visit, about the difference between being wild and being domesticated. And Ivan and Bob and Bob and Kimu, which is the wolf that's at the zoo, are kind of talking back and forth about the benefits of being wild, if there are any, and the benefits of being kept or domesticated. And Bob kind of talks about how they have walls regardless, and the walls can be good and keep things out, but the walls can also be bad because they keep you in. So we see Ivan and Bob getting to visit a little bit. He makes it to his spot where he's able to be with both Ivan and Ruby, who is also at the zoo. And through the midst of this visit, we have some chaos going on because they are in preparation for a hurricane. So a hurricane is supposed to be hitting where they are at the zoo, the town that they live in. And so we're seeing some of the commotion of that. Julia has been told that she's got to leave and get home. The people at the zoo are kind of making preparations to make sure the animals are taken care of. So that's where we're picking up today. So the first chapter we're reading today is called Not Talking. Often when I'm with Ivan, we don't even bother talking. We just look out at his domain, at the green grass and the crazy babies and the swaggering juveniles and the hardworking females, and we think of nothing and everything. When you've been through the worst with someone, you appreciate the best. That's why sometimes when he says, "Hey, Bob," it's enough for me to just say, "Hey, Ivan," and then we just listen to the palm trees rustle and watch the grass sway. Brave. Once, when we were still at the mall, I told Ivan how brave I thought he was. The way he put up with everything that had happened to him and never stopped being a good guy. Ivan just looked at me, cocked that big old head of his, nodded a bit. "That's not brave, Bob," he finally said. "That's just knowing what I can't change." "I call it brave," I said. "I call it crazy brave." Ivan held up a browning banana up to the light, like it was the most beautiful thing he'd seen in his entire gorilla life. I wondered whether he was going to eat it or draw it. You never know with Ivan. "Seems to me there are a lot of ways to be brave, Bob." A tiny mouse named Eek skittered across his cage floor. "Hey, Eek," said Ivan. "Just checking for crumbs," she said nervously, because she always sounded nervous. "Dibs on all leftovers," I reminded her. She looked so terrified that I relented. "Over there, behind the tire, old Carrot Top. You can have it." "Respect, Bob," she said, scampering off. "Take a small creature like Eek," said Ivan. He scratched his chin with the end of the banana. He did that when he was in a philosophical mood, when he was thinking through things. Maybe brave for a mouse is different from brave for me or brave for you. He looked at me fondly. "You're the bravest dog I know, pal." "I ain't brave." I chewed on my tail, avoiding his gaze. You are, Bob, untamed and undaunted," said Ivan, and he chomped off a hunk of banana. He offered the rest to me, but I shook my head. I wasn't feeling hungry. Also, it was mostly just banana peel. "That's just my shtick, my routine." I hesitated. "I mean, sure, I'm tough, compared to, say, Eek, but that's setting the bar pretty low." "You're too hard on yourself sometimes, Bob." I met his eyes. He had these dark brown, deep-set eyes, really kind ones. Eyes that made you want to admit things. Confess your failures. Once, when I was little, just a pup, I did something. Ivan waited patiently. Ivan is the king of patience. I felt myself dashing into a dead-end tunnel I couldn't escape. I didn't want to go there, not even with Ivan. Never mind, I yawned. I do that when I'm anxious. I'm rambling. Bob? Ivan asked. You okay? You know me, Ivan. I'm always okay. Always. I slipped away before he could ask me anything more. So he was getting ready to tell us a little bit more about before he came to Big Top Mall. Maybe he'll get comfortable enough to share it. We'll see. This next chapter is called Ruby, so we get to see baby Ruby. Uncle Bob! Ruby races over, galump, galump, across the broad field that's part of the elephant domain. She's so cute when she runs, like she's determined not to trip over her trunk. Ruby adores me. I make her laugh. I read the room. I lighten the mood. I gotta admit, I am kind of adorable. When I'm with Ivan, I think, pal, we've been through a lot, you and me. We are survivors. When I'm with little Ruby, I think, girl, look at you. Hard luck passed, and here you are, so much happier, so loved. Ruby, like Ivan, was plucked from Africa as a baby. She ended up in a circus that went bankrupt, then got shipped off to Max Mall. Ruby was taken in by dear old Stella. When Stella passed away, Ivan stepped in to play. Well, elephant dad, I guess you could say. I did my part too. Not because I felt like I had to. It just made life easier. Elephant toddlers are a handful. You think humans are bad? Try putting a 200-pound baby elephant in timeout. Which would be rather daunting, do you agree? Ruby's family. Little Ruby seems much more content at the park, surrounded by her new herd, because now she's got all kinds of elephants with her. Old and young, and in between. They spoil that adorable pachyderm like you wouldn't believe. Pachyderm is another way of saying elephant. She deserves every minute of it. Kid had a rough start. Some elephants hang out in packs of females. Now that she's at the park, Ruby has adoptive sisters and aunts and grandmothers galore. In the wild, the elephant guys head off once they're old enough and do their own thing. Sometimes I lose track of who's who among the elephants because they're always taking mud baths, scrambling their smells. By the way, what kind of animal actually likes baths? Mud, sure, because dogs, they don't like baths, do they? Not at all. But elephants love mud baths. What other animal likes mud baths? Animal that I love with a cute little nose. Piggies like mud baths, don't they? I think they're cute when they're in their mud bath. Ivan's art. How's it going, girl? I call to Ruby as she stops near the moat, edging the wall. I had cantaloupe for breakfast, Uncle Bob, and it was yummy. And then I took a mud bath. She pauses to take a breath. Do you want to hear a new dog riddle, Uncle Bob? Of course I do, I say, and I catch Ivan's amused glance. What kind of dog is always on time? Asks Ruby. Do you know it? A dog on time. You got me, Ruby. I'm totally baffled, befuddled, bewildered. What kind of dog? A watchdog, Ruby exclaims. Watchdog. Get it, Uncle Bob? Do you get it? A watch, like you look at the time. Not bad, Ruby. Not bad at all, I say. Ivan says it's going to rain buckets, says Ruby. She dips her trunk in the moat and blows bubbles. Because remember, the hurricane is on its way. I think Ivan is on to something there. Did he show you his new picture? Ruby asks. She grabs a tuft of grass and tosses it in the air. I wish I could see it, but I can't because of that silly wall. But he told me all about it. My pal Ivan is quite the artist, just like Julia. Ivan sits up and nods towards a spot on the wall. Another mud mural, I ask. So while Ruby bathes in mud, Ivan, who was named Mud, paints with mud. As any good dog knows, dirt plus water equals mud, and mud means mess, and mess means let's roll in this stuff and maybe dig a hole, or 2, or 10. But for Ivan, mud plus a flat surface equals a waiting canvas. I crane my neck, edging a bit farther down the top of the wall. Don't want to draw attention to myself. Hey, nice, I say. I mean, I'm not an art guy. To me, art is a glob of spray cheese on a cheese dog with extra grated cheese on top. Still, I've always admired Ivan's work. Ivan begins. No, I say, don't tell me. Let me guess. You always guess wrong, Ivan says. Not always. You thought my palm tree was a dandelion. Art is in the eye of the beholder, I say. You thought my blackberries were giant ants. Kenyani ambles up to join the conversation. That's Ivan's girlfriend. And need I remind you that you thought his portrait of me was a chimpanzee with gas? The resemblance was striking, I say. Kenyani glares at me. She glares at me a lot. On the subject of chimps. Now remember, does Ivan think a lot of chimps? No, he says they're slimy and not very smart. On the subject of chimps. Probably I shouldn't have mentioned the chimp angle. Gorillas aren't as open-minded as dogs. A lot of them have a thing about chimps. Think they're clowns. But when I look at apes and gorillas, seems to me they have a lot more in common than they admit to. Dogs ain't perfect, but I'll tell you one thing where we rule. Tolerance. Another word for tolerance is acceptance, meaning they accept others. Think of a dog. They're just happy to see you. They accept. For us, a dog is a dog. I see a Great Dane. I say howdy. I run into a puggle. It's glad to meet ya. How's it going? Smelled any good pee lately? There's one dog that Bob doesn't get along with, though. Do you remember her name? It was a candy bar. Yeah, Snickers. He's not a fan of Snickers. Go to a dog park and you'll see. We are equal opportunity playful. You sniff my rear, I sniff yours. You don't see that with humans, obviously. Constantly seeing differences where none exist. If only we could get along like dogs. All those things like skin color, dogs could care less. You think I don't hang with the Dalmatian because he's spotted? Or a Shar-Pei because she's wrinkled? Have you ever seen a Shar-Pei dog? Oh my goodness, they are the cutest thing ever. I'm not saying I love every dog I meet. Snickers comes to mind. But I'll always give the dog the benefit of the doubt. Life is short, play is good, and there are plenty of tennis balls to go around. Life's short, why don't we all get along? It's a good message for today, isn't it? A very handsome dog is the next chapter. Hi, Aunt Kenyani, Ruby calls. Once again, Ruby, says Kenyani, I am not your aunt. I am a primate, and you, my dear, are not. More's the pity. But if Ivan is my uncle, then you have to be my aunt, Ruby declares. Ahem, says Ivan, pointing to the wall. My painting, Bob? I consider. It looks like a dog. Ruby flaps her ears. I can tell she's trying very hard to stay quiet. A very handsome dog, I add. Is it? It is, Ruby exclaims. It's you, Uncle Bob. Uncle Ivan told me. But who's that? I ask, pointing to another set of mud strokes. I thought you needed a companion, says Ivan. I know you must get lonely at home by yourself all day. It's true, I do get lonely, but I've never mentioned that to Ivan. Guy's like a mind reader. I think Snickers and Bob would make a cute couple, says Ruby. I blink in disbelief. Bite your tongue, or trunk, since she has a trunk. He says, bite your trunk. Ruby starts to reply, but her voice is drowned out by a sharp clap of thunder. Remember that hurricane? Storm's getting close, says Kenyani. Ivan, dear, come on. You know how you hate the damp. And if you think back to the true story of Ivan, any time it would rain, Ivan would either choose to go to the enclosure or he'd use those potato sacks to stand on so that his feet wouldn't get wet. It's true. He carries around old burlap sacks so that he won't have to sit on wet grass. Ivan looks at me sheepishly. She knows me so well. Kudzu, one of the baby gorillas, bounds over and leaps onto Ivan's back. Ivan loves all the youngsters, but Kudzu is his favorite. I think she reminds him a little of his twin sister Tag, who died when she was still a baby. And here you can see a picture of Ivan, very happy with a baby gorilla on his back. He wanted to be that protector, that leader, and he's finally been able to find that here at the zoo. Ride, Kudzu demands. Julia appears, her backpack at the ready. Bob, she calls, we need to get going. Ride now, Kudzu repeats, yanking on one of Ivan's ears. Looks like it's time to go, says Ivan. Good to see you, buddy. Stay dry, okay? Will do, big guy. I turn to Kenyani. Enchanted as always, my dear. A trumpeting noise cuts through the air. Uh-oh, says Ruby. That's Aunt Akello. Akello is the oldest of the elephant aunts. Lumber's over. Come on, Ruby. Weather's getting bad. Just one more minute, Ruby pleads. Now. But I need to tell Uncle Bob one more riddle. Now, Akello repeats. Nobody ever listens to the littlest elephant, Ruby complains. You can tell me the riddle next time, kiddo, I say, winking at Akello. Ruby brightens. Okay, gotta go or I'll be in big trouble. Love you, Uncle Bob. See you later, Uncle Ivan. And Aunt Kenyani. I'm not your... Kenyani begins, but Ruby is already galloping back to her herd. All right, so we see all of the elephants, or a couple of the elephants, and we see Ivan and Kenyani and Bob, and they're all kind of getting to visit and chat a little bit, but they are still getting prepared for this hurricane, and that clap of thunder has kind of given them the signal that they need to head inside and prepare. So that's where we're going to stop for part 7 of our story. I will post part 8 also today if you want to continue on listening. Until then, I'll talk with you guys later.